public comment on items not on the agenda before we dive in? Do we have any comment on the proposed fiscal year 2021 budget? All right, we'll jump in with our first presenter. That would be Nicole Rush.
Morning. My agenda item is a request for payment for Botany Natural Soap for their BSTF grant. They have hired all 6 people they were awarded to hire for in their first year. So this is a draw request for 6 jobs.
It's a good year to be in the soap business.
Right. That's what I've heard. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. No, that all sounds good. And they are located out at the Bonner Mill. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I would move that we approve the request for payment form.
Excellent. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
All right, Dory. This is a very exciting one.
Is Dory on the line?
I don't see Dory is on the line. I can send her an invite real quick.
Well, I could probably cover it.
You looking for me?
There she is.
There she is.
My ears were starting. I just looked at the clock.
You were right on time, Dory. You're up right now.
Are you already to appointing a board member?
We're ready. We're ready for you to present.
Okay. So as you may recall, a couple weeks ago, Commissioners Slotnick and Juanita decided that it would be good moving forward on the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority for it to be a commissioner, at least for this first appointment, and possibly down the road the commission would decide something different, but at this point it would be appropriate to have a commissioner. So this is the time, and I don't know, is Juanita on the call?
She's not.
Okay. So I don't know if you want to proceed today with that. If the
we have 2 of us, so I think we can.
Right. The only question was whether I think it's fine, Dave, if you feel okay voting for. I guess Josh, if you could make a motion and both of you vote on it.
I was just going to say I'd like to take the opportunity to make a motion that our colleague and friend Dave Strohmeyer occupy this role, and this also at this time just to congratulate him on getting us to this point and all the great work he's done thus far, creating a huge amount of momentum, getting counties across the state to sign on, and is quite possibly one of the more exciting, positive things of the year so far. So I would hate that Dave play this role on this board.
Well,
yeah.
Well, thanks, Josh. I would be honored to accept that opportunity and appointment. So maybe it's a little odd that I'm seconding the motion for my own appointment, but I will do so and look forward to serving in this role for the next 3 years to get this thing off the ground.
So good. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yay.
Okay, we're the second county to have a board appointment after Butte Silverbow.
Nice. That's so good.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dory. Okay, Kylie.
Hello, everyone. So I'm here today for the Land Stewardship Award. So this is, well, let me introduce myself, Natural Resource Specialist in County Parks, Trails, and Open Lands in the Community Planning Services Department. And so this is the Land Stewardship Award, an annual award that recognizes folks for their great land stewardship practices and on their private land, and who then share about their information and the work they've been doing in terms of field trips or having some kind of engagement to help other folks learn from what they're doing. And so each year we have people nominate great land stewards, and they're nominated by neighbors, community members, agency folks, whoever. And then the county's Open Land Citizen Advisory Committee then reviews the applicants and nominations and selects the people who they think is best for that year, and then requests or sends a recommendation to the commissioner. So this year we have a recommendation from OLC for the Andersons. So Becky and Denny Anderson, they live up in Upper Miller Creek, and they've done a lot of great work they've got their land under conservation easement. They have recently been doing a lot of restoration work on the creek, Miller Creek there, as well as Spooner Creek. And they've had a lot of student groups and other folks come and help out with that restoration activity. So we're pleased to recommend them to you for selection for the annual stewardship award. And so we're asking you today to basically take that recommendation and act on it. And then there's a proclamation that you see that you'd sign today. And then that will be read and presented officially at a field trip next week. So if you're willing and interested to do that, I'd ask you to do that today.
Sounds great.
Okay, I would move that we accept OLC's recommendations for the 2020 Missoula County Land Stewardship Award.
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Kylie. I look forward to the field trip.
Great.
Yep, Kylie.
All right.
And just a brief correction to something that I said earlier. The moment it slipped out of my lips, I realized I was giving credit where credit was not due. It was Gallatin County, not Butte Silver Bow, that appointed the first board member to the authority. So sorry, Butte Silver Bow. There's still an opportunity for you to get with the program here.
They did say they wanted to do it. They just haven't appointed their person.
Yeah, they did adopt the resolution. They just have not quite decided who from the mining city would serve that role.
All right. Okay, Eric, would you like to chat with us about this Main Street Bridge PSA?
I would. We are essentially done with the work, but this is an issue that came up during excavation back in June. Dick Anderson, subcontractor, JAG Paving and Excavating, ran into some rather large chunks of concrete that were buried about 10 feet below the road surface. So it was an unexpected encounter and required a little more work for them. Didn't require a lot of time, but it did require some unexpected out-of-pocket expenses in the terms of renting some equipment to break it down into smaller pieces and then dispose of it at Republic Services. So that bill for the extra work was about $1,000. And at the same time, JAG was the paving contractor, so they proposed a different asphalt mix that was cheaper. And so for the quantity that they had to put down, the difference in price would be about $423. So they combined this change order with a $1,000 bill and a $420-some credit for a balance of $649. So out of the $674,000 contract, I think $694 isn't horrible to ask for a little extra money. So we would recommend that the change order be approved.
Great.
Okay, I would move that we approve or authorize the chair to sign the change order.
Wonderful. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Eric. All right, Jason Emery.
All right, is this the, I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the agenda. Is this the laptop purchase?
Yeah, with ITC.
Yep.
$1,000.
Yep. So not terribly exciting. Let me turn my video on. So it's just our yearly purchase for our refresh. So we go through a PC refresh cycle every 5 to 6 years to keep our computers working top notch. And this is the laptop portion of that order. So it of course exceeds my purchasing authority. The amount is $52,830. That covers every laptop that we know either needs to be replaced or folks that have requested upgrades from desktops. I suspect there may be more as the year progresses, as more and more folks want to transition. But for now, this will get us going and allow us to start that project and just business as usual.
Let's keep doing business as usual as best we can.
Yeah.
All right, I would move that we authorize the chair to sign the purchase agreement with ITC.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this is a good one. Snow removal.
Yeah.
So exciting.
I'm gonna turn it over to Hauser. I wasn't sure if he'd be here today, so.
Yeah, glad to have you, Jason Hauser. Let's talk snow removal.
Yeah, so my department and the library have had an understanding for years about snow removal, and we take care of it. And this is basically just taking that verbal understanding and putting it on paper. We do all snow removal, ice, all of that for them, and they pay us $5,000 a year to cover snow removal for us. There's never been anything written down on it, and so we're just basically putting it on paper. So
great. Well, I'm glad we'll be prepped and ready for when there's snow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea to have a written agreement in place. So I would move that we adopt the agreement between Missoula County and the library for snow removal.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming by. Adrian.
Good morning, Commissioners. So what you have before you is obligating documents for an emergency management performance grant. As you will recall, this is an annual grant that we apply for primarily for our operations within the Office of Emergency Management by way of staff time. But at the end of every grant cycle, and it runs on a federal grant cycle, there's always some reverted funds from counties that didn't utilize their allocation. And so counties are eligible to apply for what they call special projects from the reverted fund account. We applied for $20,000 for a special project to purchase some equipment for our Type 3 incident management team that's housed out of our office. So this would include a portable repeater, some additional radios, and some iPads that they can utilize for incident management. This is a 50-50 cost share grant, and we feel like we have the $10,000 in vacancy savings.
Fantastic.
Okay, let's do it. I would move that we authorize the chair to sign the obligating documents.
Great, thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Well, you're here, Adrian. Let's talk state of emergency.
All right. So as I think everybody saw this morning, there's smoke in the valley, and we had a pretty substantial lightning bust come through yesterday morning. But the ERCs, or the energy release component, that's how we measure the ignitability and of our fuels, has been steadily ticking up as the temperatures have been increasing. And so what is kind of our normal internal process is that when we reach the very high fire danger, which we did on Monday morning, it is kind of our trigger to initiate a proclamation to declare a state of emergency relative to wildfire. What that does is that opens our emergency operations plan, provides for delegations of authorities to incident commanders to make some decisions relative to evacuation or controlling ingress and egress.
Good. Well, let's be ready.
Thanks. Yeah, and just to put an exclamation point on what you just said, Adrian, for members of the media who are out there, this is not indicating that we have a massive wildfire bearing down on Missoula County as we speak, but it's preparing us and putting us in a position where we can respond more nimbly if we need to.
Yeah, very well said.
And I should also say, on a related note, today is the 110th anniversary of the 1910 fires, which on August 20th, 1910, with a passing cold front, which I think I heard might be coming our way today. It happens this time of year in the Northern Rockies. Many fires throughout the Northern Rockies were fanned to conflagration scale, and over 3 million acres were burned across the region. And mind you, this was in an era predating climate change, predating effects that fire suppression had on the landscape. So big fires have happened and will continue to happen throughout our region.
Dave,
So-
passing cold front is. Did you mean it's wind? Is that what's blowing things up?
That's exactly right. So not cold front in terms of we're going to see snow drifts pile up or anything, but wind-driven events are frequent this time of year.
Yeah.
So with that, I would move that we approve the proclamation to declare a state of emergency in Missoula County due to current and expected wildfire danger.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.
Thank you, commissioners, and I'll stay on to provide kind of an update of what's going on relative to the wildfire situation in Missoula County for discussion.
Thank you. Chris, talk some courthouse security.
Yeah, so commissioners, you have a short-term contract here with Black Knight Security, who's been providing our security here at the courthouse. Originally, we were doing this as an add-on to the services they're already providing in some of the other locations for the county, but we are going to go ahead and do a solicitation for that service for the rest of the year as we go through that. So this contract will run through September 30th to give us time to complete that solicitation. So it's just a short-term contract for the work they've been doing, and then through the end of this next month. So
great.
Okay, I would move that we approve the PSA.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then the second item I have for you today is just the last piece of the elected officials pay piece. As you know, the compensation board met earlier this year and determined not to grant raises to elected officials this year, with the exception of 1 penny more per hour. And as you recall, that's an anomaly of state law. We have to grant some raise to elected officials, or deputy sheriffs are ineligible to receive longevity during that period. And we, the compensation board, did not want to have that happen to the deputies. So they recommended a 1 cent per hour increase to elected officials' pay. And so this is just a formal resolution from the recommendations of the compensation board for final adoption. And so those raises, that 1 penny per hour more that elected officials will make, started on the first pay period of this new fiscal year, which was June 28th. So this is just the resolution for that.
Don't spend it all in one place, Josh. I would move that we approve the compensation resolution.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any correspondence? All right, discussion items. I think Dave Wall has brought this one before us around background checks for a janitorial contract, on janitorial contracts.
Yeah, good morning, commissioners and everybody. It's good to see everyone. This should be a pretty, I think, good and interesting discussion. So we are about ready to send out an RFP for janitorial services. I'll probably put it up on the website tomorrow. So it'll be in the Missoula in the next couple of Sundays. And there's kind of a new wrinkle in this RFP in that due to our kind of security audit we had last year, it was recommended that we have background checks for janitorial personnel. And so this would, what we're asking for is background checks by any contractor for janitorial services. And if there are folks who have been convicted of a felony in the last 5 years, that they would not be allowed to work in county buildings. This has, it's a pretty reasonable request, and it's something we might need to do. I have to admit, though, it's stuck in my craw pretty bad, and I'm really not in favor of it, although I also will say that I'm not very confident that I'm right. it might be something that we ought to do. But either way, I just thought that you all should be aware of it and decide if you would like to leave it in there, so that the first time you see this won't be when we present you with a contract. So that's the main thing. And I think Jason Emery probably does the best job of explaining why we might need this. I see Erica Grindy and Brian West are also here. And we also have Sean Monger on the line, who's the owner of the current contractor, Garden City Janitorial, just to see how it might affect businesses that are in this industry. So, but Jason, if you want to talk about why this might be necessary to do that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah, and I'll take responsibility for bringing the subject up. So, you know, I got to thinking, and it certainly was something I've been exposed to before, you know, prior to coming to the county and other lines of work where this was fairly standard practice, but it certainly was brought up during an enterprise risk assessment that I had done a few years ago, mostly around an IT point of view, but of course, physical security plays into that pretty heavily. And kind of the idea behind it, of course, is janitorial staff do have an very high level of physical access to our buildings and our offices. And, you know, as you know, we're the repository of a lot of very sensitive data for our citizens and our employees. Some of it's in physical form, so a lot of it's in electronic form. And, you know, matter of fact, I would say a lot of janitorial staff actually have more access to offices than most of our own internal staff. And so I feel that it puts us at unnecessary risk, both from a physical and even an IT standpoint. I know the recommendations from law enforcement agencies like the Montana Department of Justice, FBI, and such recommend, you know, actually doing this sort of check on all contractors that have any sort of access to your facilities or your systems. You know, and I think that's something we might need to consider down the road of looking a little bit deeper into that. You know, obviously, you know, sensitive records should be secured in the evenings in offices like HR and law enforcement and courts and all of that. But, you know, as we know, that doesn't always happen. People inadvertently leave things out. I also think that, you know, unfortunately, even on the electronic side, physical access to even a network port in our offices that are unsupervised can provide somebody with a little bit of skill access to circumvent some of our technical controls as well. Not to say that something like this completely eliminates risk, but you know, I do feel that it's not terribly onerous in what we're proposing. I mean, we're cognizant of the idea that, you know, we want people to have second chances and be able to do that. But, you know, once you move into the felony, you know, world, you know, I think we kind of came to an agreement that the 5 years was reasonable. You know, and I think that probably most people wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, we obviously aren't looking to, you know, punish someone that got caught with marijuana 10 years ago or something like that. That's unreasonable. I know that Deb Bell, and she probably want to mention, sent an email about this. And I feel that all of our buildings and locations potentially are sensitive. We all have employee files as supervisors and managers that are in both physical and electronic form. And our network is one big network. You know, you can drive all the way to Sealy and that network port has the same access as it does in the courthouse. So I think from you know, trying to differentiate, well, if you're cleaning here or you're cleaning there, it's different. It's very difficult to manage. And I think the risks basically are the same. So anyway, that's kind of the background behind it. I think it's fairly standard practice in a lot of cases, you know, at least from where I sit, and, you know, it's certainly something that should be considered. And of course, now's the time to do it since we're kind of in our renewal phase for these cleaning contracts. So that's really all I have. I don't know if Erica or Brian want to add or detract anything from that.
I'll jump in. So, you know, I certainly appreciate, you know, the information that Jason received from the work done by the outside enterprise risk assessment. And I, to some extent, support this, but I think, and Jason and I have talked about this, I think we also have an obligation to put in place some policies for employees to ensure that files are locked up, because, you know, while what he's saying is important, the reality is we all have the responsibility in our jobs to ensure that we're doing whatever we can to protect confidential, protected information. So, I mean, I'll be perfectly honest, and it's probably my background as a lawyer. I can fall both ways on this, because I'm just not sure that, I don't know where the 5 years comes from. I mean, we've seen it in other contracts, but this is such a sensitive thing for me that, people make mistakes, and I know Jason, Dave, and I have gone around on this, so this is certainly not going against what Jason's put in front of you, but I just struggle. So I very much appreciate some input from you, commissioners, and certainly if there's public that can bring some perspective to this, I think that would be helpful too, because it does send a message, and we just need to be cautious about what message this sends for us.
So I just want to add a little anecdote to this. Last year, I was part of a large community housing conversation. Sounds like nothing to do with what we're talking about, but actually ties in. And I sat at the table around rental access and listened to some stories from people who were recently incarcerated, who had jobs and or vouchers for housing and couldn't get into housing because of their past. And we're looking at people who have committed a crime, done done their time, right? paid their restitution to some degree, and now are attempting to rebuild their lives. And working as a janitor is kind of one of those bottom end jobs, not as a management person, but doing the physical work that I imagine with a little bit of training, most people could do. And to say to someone, well, we know you can't get a place to live, and we're going to make sure that this relatively easy access type of job is off limits to you as well. It's a really tough thing. And I certainly respect what you're saying, Jason, about security. And I'm not saying that I am on one side or the other yet. I just wanted to add this to the discussion. I don't know which way I believe just yet. I would like to know, as Erica pointed out, why 5 years? Is there data out there that says after 5 years of not committing a second felony, people don't anymore? Or is it 2.5, or is it 10, or is this just like a nice round number?
I think, and Brian West, are you on? I believe that number came from some legal source. And I'm not married to the 5-year thing. I don't remember exactly, but Brian, do you have any?
I'm present here. My camera's not working. There's no specific line at 5 years. I think what you will find is most, and this comes from a former life, most felonies that result in, say, a deferred imposition of sentence that would have been sealed and removed off of somebody's public criminal history are resolved no longer than 6 years out. So if somebody's going to have a conviction on the record that's a felony, it's basically the first time you are convicted of a felony, the vast majority of people receive a deferred imposition of sentence. Once they have concluded that successful probation period, they can have that record sealed, and it no longer appears on a public search. So right around 5 years would be the time that most of those people would be past that original felony sentence.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, I'm somewhat conflicted on this, and I would love to hear from the janitorial service representative on the line here in a second also. But yeah, I would say that we absolutely want to maintain the security of our information and facilities, but the question for me comes down to, at what point in time has a convicted felon truly proved up with society and paid their I guess consequences of their actions, and also not all felonies are the same. I mean, if we're talking about theft of information, theft of materials, that's one thing, but there are all manner of other felonies that have nothing related to necessarily what we're trying to protect here, unless we're saying that there's this underlying criminal element related to every felony that would make them more at risk for breaching our securities. So
I think the idea with that, Dave, was to not make it too onerous to manage from both the cleaning company that had a contract as well as the county to, you know, to try and so narrowly define what's appropriate, what's not would be, I think, very difficult, you know, from just an oversight standpoint. You know, and then you're getting into the infinite divisions of what is and is not acceptable. So just some background on that. We had that particular conversation, and I don't disagree with anything that you guys are saying. There's obviously a vast difference in types of crime and individuals that commit them and how well that they, you know, come out of that. So
is the cleaning services representative on the line here?
Monger?
Yes, I am. I'm here. Good morning, everybody.
Yeah. What do you think?
Obviously, this isn't new to us. We have this topic day in and day out presented as we clean banks. We clean a lot of locations. I do feel that it is our responsibility in this industry to get these people back to work. It is a job that they can jump right back into and be part of the community. Specifically with county work, it tend to be higher paying, so it's prevailing wage. So it's an opportunity for these guys to get a step up, an opportunity to make a decent living that they can get into housing, as it was brought up. But I also understand the security needs. That's why we do background checks already on all of our staff. I do see there is a need in these buildings for some security protocols, and I do understand why this is being discussed. I do question the 5 years. I think why not 3 or a little bit lower would be helpful, as our current labor market is pretty slim and our options to hire are very limited. We've had postings on Craigslist, Indeed, multiple job sites, and we get 2, 3 applicants, and you know, maybe one of them will show up to an interview. And so we're working with limited numbers on employees, and to get the job done and done well, this would make it more difficult.
Hey, what's your history of hiring people who have been incarcerated? How's it gone?
Really well. We hire a lot out of pre-release. We hire a lot with felony records way in the past or recent. We watch them pretty closely, as we have supervisors on at night when they're working in the area, if not in the building. We have had really good luck. I mean, we do battle in this community a big drug problem, and that's more of our issue than any kind of theft or any aspect that would relate to this. I feel like just our community has a problem with drugs right now, and that's where we have relapses and people just not showing up to work rather than showing up and taking things.
Yeah. Thanks.
Hey, Sean, you mentioned that you do background checks now. In your process, what would be a disqualifying factor in the process that you're already using?
Anything with theft, anything like forgery, theft, we just rule them out. And if it was way in the past, you know, we're talking 10 years or more, we may still have a place for them. But most likely, it's definitely not going to be in a bank. It's not going to be in, you know, a vital place, maybe in a car dealership or a grocery store or someplace that they're working in a team atmosphere or in a setting that they're not going to be susceptible to or exposed to private information.
So from that standpoint, if it sounds like it is possible to ferret out or to differentiate between types of felonies. So I just wonder if this is already being done at the level of the contractors, a contractor that we're working with. Maybe it's not as onerous as we might think in terms of differentiating between felonies that involve theft or forgery and something else.
Is there a way to put this potentially onerous task on the shoulders of the contractor rather than the shoulders of our staff.
Right.
That was the idea. You know, we certainly would not have the capacity to do these background checks for every, you know, contractor's employee. It sounds good, great what Sean's doing. I think what I would be looking for, and really what he's doing is certainly reasonable from my point of view. I think just setting that baseline expectation, because say we had another company get a contract and they weren't doing it, you know, that's how do we ensure that we're enforcing, sounds like some best practices that Sean Monger and his organization are doing is really what I'm getting at. Kind of that, you know, you got to meet this is really the goal rather than just assuming that somebody's doing something.
Can we build that into contract language or into bid language? I guess Dave Wall, this is a good question for you.
Yeah, we certainly can. What I'm hearing is, you know, instead of kind of one way or the other, we can sort of change it up a little bit and talk about theft, forgery, or related felonies, and maybe reducing the time to 3 years would be an easier way to go, or would be a way to be maybe more fair. Although again, I don't want to make it seem like we haven't been fair or unreasonable, but it seemed like that would be a good way to go. Even with the 3 years, I'd like to know, let's say somebody was on parole or probation still within that time. I assume the ability to get a job is an important part of the meeting parole.
I mean, listening to Mr. Monger talk, he was saying that they're hiring people out of pre-release. If we had a 3-year rule on this, pre-release is out.
But remember, these are, I guess my one counter to that is like Garden City Cleaning, they're working for multiple customers. So it doesn't necessarily preclude someone from working, just maybe not working for the county during that time frame. Yes. Right. So if it was a 1-for-1, obviously that becomes more onerous and I think plays more into what we're talking about here. But you know, I think we have to have some level, some, you know, reasonable standard, you know, just because of the nature of the business that we do.
That's good point.
Mm-hmm. I think it's oh, sorry. I was going to say, I think that's a good point too. I would point out, first of all, I think in thinking about what Erica brought up about how, you know, these are things that we might want to take on internally too, to make sure that all of the onus is not on contractors is a pretty important part of it. And it's really our responsibility. Now, they have a responsibility too, but it's, you know, protecting that information is really our responsibility. And the other thing is, even though they could get jobs somewhere else, since we're local government and we talk a lot about trying to decide things based on our values, we've talked a lot about that here in budget recently, and we certainly have this very important, wonderful jail diversion plan that we're trying to do. I just want to make sure we're not making decisions that go kind of counter to those things and to our values.
Well, a couple of the options I guess I would like to explore more would be, one, putting back onto the contractor the job of conducting the background checks, coupled with being more fine-grained in terms of what we're trying to weed out, such as theft, forgery, etc., and not just blanket across the board felonies, and take that off of us, required of our contractors. And then that could either be coupled with a decreased time frame for this individual to be felony free, 3 years, or I would still be open to the idea of no time frame.
I was just going to say that, Dave. I was going to, if we can do this kind of fine grain sifting and put that job on the shoulders of the contractor, then, you know, somebody's in pre-release because they had multiple DUIs. Well, they should not be doing anything where they're using a vehicle, but if they can ride their bike to 199 West Pine and clean the building, I don't see how that puts us at risk. If that person had a history of white collar crime, they shouldn't be anywhere near this building.
So in today's news, it might be questionable whether Steve Bannon could work for us in this capacity, depending on how that plays out. But
yeah, I would appreciate if he didn't stop by.
Yeah, that would be okay. That would be okay. I would point out with the time frame to make sure we understand, so that if we're saying if we limit to, say, theft and forgery and related felonies, if we don't have a time frame like 3 years, then what we're saying is then somebody convicted of theft, forgery, etc., would never be able to work here at the county.
We could, maybe we put the time frame on those crimes.
Sure, and then just the others would not be even included then. Okay.
And the other piece that you mentioned, Dave, and you alluded to this also, Jason, which I think is a worthy take-home message, is that we need to probably redouble our efforts internally to assure security, just because there's nothing that would preclude someone with no criminal record who has criminal intent availing themselves of an easy opportunity. So simply eliminating all felons, folks with a felony record, is not going to assure that we don't have a problem.
There are plenty of people who committed their first felony.
Yes.
Right.
Sure. No, it's very true. I mean, we're honestly probably at our most risk from internal folks. I mean, I'll just be honest. That's the statistics will show that is an insider threat has the potential for the most damage. I mean, we put a lot of things in place to protect us from bad guys outside, and I use that term loosely, but folks that are willing to do us harm. But just by the nature of working for Missoula County, you're offered some level of trust and access to things, and certainly we can't stop someone that has malicious intent. And I agree with Eric 100%. This doesn't alleviate our responsibility from taking steps both individually and departmentally of protecting this stuff. Some of the things that happen into that clean desk policies, are a thing that's commonly used, and supervisors being aware of this stuff and what's going on, and securing things at night, things like that. I mean, we certainly don't divorce ourselves from that. And I think we should spend some time, marketing that, probably do a little bit of extra policy enforcement and education, for sure, because the world is certainly different, and we're getting big. That's a big thing too, is we're not the organization that we were 10 or 15 years ago. We're getting very big, very complex, lots of people coming in and out, new services and things like that. And it just changes the dynamic. Missoula is getting bigger as a community. I mean, it all's there.
It's true.
So, it looks like Dory raised her hand. Hi, Dory.
Maybe it was an accident.
Maybe not.
Maybe it was Cat Bell.
No, it says Dory.
Okay.
Mr. Munger, are you still on the line?
Yes, I'm still here.
Would some of the things that the commission has suggested with maybe being a little more specific with the types of crimes and the timeframes, would that be something that would be manageable for a contractor like yourself from a logistical standpoint?
Yes, that's very reasonable. We actually are in several contracts similar to that. Some areas require or limit to violent offenders or, that type. So this is white collar crimes that we see very little of. So yeah, it wouldn't really affect us too much.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the input. Well, we can certainly work on a new draft with the original team, and we can bring it back for further discussion, maybe.
Great.
Would that be okay, Dave Wall? Maybe we postpone this another week and.
Absolutely, I think that'd be fine. Yeah, I think we have some good ideas to go forward about limiting the types of felonies, and then for those few felonies that we're talking about, maybe limiting the time frame to about 3 years or so. And I think that's probably something that everybody can kind of get behind.
Okay. Brian or Erica, do you have anything else?
Thanks.
Not at this time for me.
Yeah. Good discussion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really good discussion. Appreciate all the thoughtfulness.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
Thanks, Mr. Monger, for joining us for this.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for allowing me.
Okay. Any communications needs, requests?
Yes, I have just a couple things. First of all, the time capsule, the library,
All
due
right.
tomorrow. It's
So
okay.
what does that have to be on a specific paper? What is
Yeah, preferably. There's a special paper that.
It's on my desk, Josh. It's
okay. All right.
Yeah.
I might have it in my office right now, Josh. I'm here. You can come, or I'll come take a piece of paper. Yeah,
So
and then
I will need a piece of paper too to write on.
Okay.
Allison, can we run this paper through a printer, or should we write by hand?
Either we can. I printed a couple things on the paper, so you can do that if you want.
I think part of this exercise, though, Josh, is to demonstrate to people 50 years from now that we used to be able to write with a pen.
Hey.
So yeah, I'll run a piece of paper over to you, Josh. And Dave, you're not going to be able to come until tonight to do that, you said?
No, just looking at my schedule, I can nary get up from my chair between now and 5 p.m. So if you could put a piece of paper on my desk, I'll come in tonight and deal with it.
Okay, yeah, and then I'll just drop it off to Jeff tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Allison.
And then one other thing, we do have the budget video on your guys' schedule now for Monday at 11:30 in front of the courthouse steps. So if you want any help with talking points on that or anything, just let me know. But that's all scheduled. So
Thanks. I'm excited for it.
Thanks.
that's all I have. Thank you.
Yep, and Josh, I have one other item, just scheduling for today. Annie had mentioned you were potentially doing a site visit or something with Public Works. We just didn't have that on your calendar. She reserved a car for you today?
Yeah, so it's on there that I'm going with Shane to look at Deep Creek.
Okay, I don't think we had that on your calendar because there is a health board meeting today at 12:15 and you're needed there to have a quorum, so.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Are we sure they don't have a quorum without me?
Yeah, they sent out an email specifically saying they need these 4 people for the quorum, so.
Do you have to be there?
With that.
Do you have to be there in person? Can you just have
It's
the
Teams,
headphones
so you
on?
could call in if you're in service.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I was really looking forward to Deep Creek and feeling like I could skip the health department. But thank you for
give me a call if you want to.
Thanks for the heads up, Casey.
Yeah.
I don't know if. Yeah. Darn it. Yeah.
So, commissioners, I hate to cut this off, but I'm gonna cut Adrian out here because we have a closed litigation strategy we have to get to because you have a settlement conference next week. So.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, Dave, if you could, Anna's going to give you some information and then we'll need you to move us to closed session.
Hi, commissioners.
Hey.
I know you'd rather talk about wildfire than litigation, but that was filed by Public Works employees against the county. And we have a mediation in that case scheduled for next week. And we would like to talk with you about, can you hear me and see me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, you froze up there for a second.
Froze for a moment, but we're back.
Okay. So we would like to talk to you about the strategy moving into that mediation. This is a discussion that, if it were public, would be detrimental to the litigating position of Missoula County. So I'd recommend that we close to have this discussion.
I would move that we close the meeting for litigation strategy.
So you have a link to a closed